Coming up, refresh, well, everything. A bit of cooking. A fuel tank gets some love. And the first crank of the mighty V12.
Here we go.
The complete, make everything perfect restoration of this 1991 BMW 850i continues. Having spent 10 years rotting in a French garden, this E31 needs everything. We stripped the chassis, had it dry ice blasted, built and installed the OEM Plus 12-cylinder engine, and spent countless hours on smaller projects within the big project. Lastly, we finished overhauling the entire rear axle, which was a big and rather satisfying job. Before reuniting the rear axle with the car, we need to go through the fuel system, starting with the filthy fuel tank.
Now that's better.
With all of the lines and hoses removed, we can get the fuel pumps out. The fuel sender unit as well.
The fuel tank is clean on the inside, however, the fuel is stale. So I'm gonna dump some fresh fuel in there so I can slosh it around and then dump it out. The fuel tank really stinks without old fuel, so that's why I want to get some fresh stuff in. I'm gonna go recycle this.
The original fuel pumps have been NLA for quite some time, but you needn't worry because Ed from V12throttle.com developed them from scratch. I want only the best for Project Marseille, and here we have upgraded fuel pumps for E31. Made with better high quality materials, further improved over the original design. They went through a lot of stress testing and proved to be bulletproof. The link for these is down below. We are reusing the original fuel sender unit as it's in good condition.
Line up the line. And now you're gonna ceramic coat the fuel tank, because why wouldn't you ceramic coat your fuel tank that you're never going to see? So using Geon ceramic coating. I mean, you gotta have a nice, shiny, clean fuel tank.
Obviously, we have a lot of fuel hoses here that are not easily accessible, so we want to make sure we're using high quality hoses that will last. We are going with OE Cool Line hoses that have a temperature range from -40 to 125 and briefly up to 140 degrees Celsius, so they are safe to be used in the engine bay as well. For the worm clamps, we are going with Ideal W4 fully stainless steel clamps. For earless clamps, we are using Oetiker SS clamps. None of this is sponsored, just my own research and experience for what to use here. You don't have to use the same, but do make sure you're using quality stuff, as random lines that you can get on eBay last for about a year, and then you'll need to drop the subframe and the fuel tank to replace them again.
And now the smaller hoses, these are 6x11 and unfortunately not available from Cool Line. Had to buy directly from BMW, and this small piece here costs 55 euros. So you gotta be careful here and not waste any of it. Look how violently they cut it off. Smooth cut. The metal pipes, I had them zinc plated. They look absolutely beautiful, and back to factory spec. Normally the place that I use, it takes about 2 weeks to get stuff zinc plated, but I asked really, really nicely, and they got this done in 2.5 days, so I really appreciate that. Here's the new hose from Q-Line. Look at this hose. It's hard as a rock. And the last fuel hose, this one is 18 mil inner diameter, and it is NLA from BMW, also not available from Q-Line or any other reputable source. Ended up buying this one, which has necessary approvals, and it is heat resistant up to 125 degrees Celsius. You can see here that it says fuel oil Jose. I don't know who Jose is, but he better be reliable. And that's the fuel tank done.
Before we proceed with the reinstallation, we need to treat the chassis first. We have some minor areas where the paint came off and some surface rust. So first I'm brushing the area, then applying Brunox epoxy primer / rust converter. After that dries overnight, the base coat is sprayed on, and then the clear coat. Once dry, you're covering the entire area with Dinitrol 4010 surface protection. This stuff goes on liquid so it can seep into all the nooks and crannies, and after a few hours it dries to a hard, transparent matte finish. It's heat resistant up to 200 degrees, and eventually I'll cover the entire underneath of the car with this stuff, as I want the chassis and every nut and bolt to be long-term protected and remain in mint condition.
The fuel filters, gonna refresh them as well. They've been sitting open for over 2 years, so I have a fresh pair here. What's important here are the hoses on the top. They are NLA from BMW, and they have a specific preformed, pre-bent shape, so they can do this swoopy swoop here. And if you do this with this line, you can limit fuel pressure, and this is gonna touch the chassis, the body of the car. We don't want that. So that's NLA. You can buy universal lines from Amazon, but they're very poor quality, and I wouldn't use that. Instead, we're going to use these lines from BMW that have this 90-degree bend here, which I think is going to work here splendidly. But we're gonna test fit it, because if I do that, it's not gonna kink. So this is the part number for this hose. It's about 25 euro per piece, which is a lot, but again, high quality rubber lines. You don't want to do this in 1 or 2 years again. So let's remove them one by one and cut the size. So here you gotta be careful in which direction you install the fuel filters. The fuel goes in here, goes through the fuel filter, and goes out through there. I think we're gonna need to paint this. Okay, gonna go paint this and clean this up. Had the bracket repainted, looks spiffy. Fresh rubber for the fuel filters. The old ones are perished, as you can see. And now we can make the top lines. First, let's slide in the rubber. This plastic thing here, I had to glue it back together because it was broken, and the new part, it's NLA. So, the rubber. So this one goes to this connection here. This is going to work beautifully. That's gonna work out brilliantly as well. And that's the fuel filtration system done. The lines on the top look great, not kinked, and ready to pump fuel. Okay, first we're gonna clean these lines here. I'm gonna jump up top, spray some brake fluid in these lines, and then use compressed air to blow them out and clean them. Okay, I had to reposition the fuel filters and adjust the lines so they don't touch the chassis of the car. This is why I first wanted to do the fuel filters before the fuel tank goes in. Okay, so these two connect to the fuel tank. Fuel goes through the filter and then out into these two lines and to the fuel rail. And that's the fuel filters installed. Clamps and the lines. I want to cover all of that with this just as an extra layer of protection. Back with the fuel tank, I had all of the straps powder coated and hardware zinc plated. I also bought this, what looks like tape from the dealer, but it's actually transparent vinyl. It's a bit rubbery. We're going to use this and put it on the edges wherever the straps connect to the body, so we don't have metal-on-metal contact, potential rubbing of the paint and forming rust there. So wherever I see that this attaches to the body of the car, I'm gonna put a piece of this rubbery material so we stop any potential rubbing and creation of rust. Nice. So you can see the protective tape layer here. This strap is touching the big one over there, and then the attaching points to the body here and here, all protected. Time for the fuel tank to go back in. It's empty, so it's pretty light. It goes like this. I'm gonna put this layer of protective tape here as well. In goes the fuel tank. So these are old connectors. I'm going to use a thin file to clean them. You never know. Chasing electrical issues, one of the worst things you can do. So this might prevent some of that. First, get the one in the middle, attach it to the car. Then it goes through a hole here. Okay, now the straps on the side. So that goes like that. Gonna spray dinitro on all of the nuts and bolts as an extra layer of protection. Let's connect the lines here. Great. The return line, which I just cleaned.
The fuel vent / vapor lines needed a lick of paint, so
I painted this line here, looks fresh, cleaned the regulating valve, tested it as well, fully functional, cleaned this line as well, and now we need to replace the hoses. This one here is available brand new, thankfully, and the big one isn't. This is also 18mm inner diameter, and it has this 90-degree bend. So we are going to use Jose, a 90-degree bend here to connect it and make the same, angle here. This one is fuel resistant. I did check that. So first, pop in this one. Now we need to sneak in these lines here. I bought this massive kit from Oetiker. Comes with various clamps, tools, and whatnot, and I wanted to get like really high quality stainless steel clamps for these connections here, because we need to use earless clamps. And I found a couple that fit. Okay, let's see how this is going to work. Yeah, that's a no. Okay, let's try now. Okay, both of the lines are through. There we are. We are through. All right. Beautiful. Clamp and another clamp. I gotta admit something, man. Working on this car, it is a thing of beauty. Everything makes sense. There's space for everything. Sure, some things are tight, but everything, the way this car was engineered and designed, with servicing in mind, to be restored, to be rebuilt, so you don't throw it away. You don't recycle it. I'm really, really enjoying working on this car. Like, I love it. I really, really do. Like, I thought that this is going to be a bit of a pain to get it in here. No, it wasn't. It was nice and fun. I gotta improve my Deutsch, and hopefully next year I can meet Mr. Adolf Fischer, the legend that engineered, designed, and made the M70 engine, the first V12 BMW. The valve. Zinc plated. Not every single bolt on this car is going to be either brand new, refurbished, or as good as new. Not reusing any old rusty hardware. And we have two plastic nuts here holding this pipe.
The fuel filler neck was rusty, so it too had to be sorted out. I tried, but I couldn't separate the metal from the plastic, and as this part is NLA, I didn't want to risk breaking it, so I took it to the zinc plating place, like this.
The fuel filler neck is back from zinc plating, and look at that. It looks beautiful, as good as new. They didn't have to remove this part here. I didn't want them to try, because I didn't want to risk breaking this. They simply dumped this into the solution, and now it's shiny, shiny. Got brand new OE fuel cap, this rubber here. It was really, really firm, but I dumped it into some silicone for like a few days, and now it's nice and soft. I have a brand new hose here, clamps, so assembly time. Let's sneak through the hose. We can put this rubber into position now. There it is. There we are. Oh yeah. Winter is here, fortunately. I hate winter. Beautiful. Now I'm gonna cover this entire wheel arch with dinitrol, because I want to protect all of this. Upon my demise in about 100 years, someone else gets this car, it's still going to look beautiful. They can just remove the wax and it's gonna look nice and shiny. And that's my goal, to make a beautiful car that's going to last. Because this, even though it's freshly zinc plated, couple of rains, maybe even just a tiny bit of a drive in salt, like in winter, it's gone, it's gonna start corroding. But with dinitrol protecting that stuff, nothing's gonna happen. We have this drain tube, something the BMW didn't do on the E31, and they should have, because you always get rust around the fuel filler cap. There you go, simple as that. A very elegant solution to draining the water from around the fuel filler cap. Beautiful. I connected all of the fuel lines in the engine bay, so we have two feed lines here that go through the fender and just above the headers, so I use some heat protection, as you can see there, like a heat wrap. and then connected them to the fuel rail, which also has heat protection. And then we have one return line on the other side. And that's the fuel system done.
And now we can proceed with the subframe.
So we have powder-coated springs, brand new spring pads, and zinc-plated software. Pop in the spring pad. The springs clip into the pads, which is really nice. Gonna make the installation much easier. You just gotta make sure that the end of the spring is sitting all the way in the spring pad. They see me rolling, patrolling, putting an E31 subframe back in. Here we go, here we go. I took the subframe out back in February, I think, or March. Now it's November and it's going back in. Un momento grandioso. Okay, there we are. Okay, that goes in. Nice. And that's the rear subframe in. Now we need to connect the trailing arm to the body. And for that, first we need to jack up the suspension here to bring it closer to the chassis of the car. Push it in. We set the bushing to the right position when we installed it in the trailing arm, which means we can torque it to spec right now. It's just the bracket here. The wheel speed sensor connector. Plug that in now. And this is for the EDC here as well. Very good. The cover we'll do later once we do the EDC plug as well.
The differential and other suspension components are coming up in the next episode. We are now swiftly moving along with the transmission.
Next up, the clutch Slave cylinder with brand new hardware / refurbished. Just need to start the bolt. And then the bracket goes there, and sugar nut. Here we have the brand new hardline. Now I need to connect it to our custom clutch line here that we made in the previous episode. How would you look at that? Perfect fit. There's a bracket here. All that goes in there and hooks up. A nice guten twist. Perfect.
Yeah, nah, I wasn't happy with that. I ended up having the hardware zinc plated because it looks better.
This is the shifter linkage. This bracket with the bushing goes here. And as you can see, it's split open, and this part is NLA. I bought some universal ones, so we're gonna see now what we can do here. And also we have bushings in the front. Okay. This boot is all cracked up. I gotta see if this can be ordered new. There you go. Ah. Oh no, this is obliterated as well. The bushings here. Well, looks like we're gonna need a new shifter. This is trash, that's trash. Oh no, they're worn out. We need to replace them. Even with the new bushings, there's too much slop here. The shifter is gonna feel like crap. And this is one of those things that we need to get right, because shifter feel is everything. These are harder than a 2-day-old baguette. I was looking forward to vapor blasting this shifter arm, but it's bent. So I'm gonna place an order for a new one. It's 100 euros. It's not terrible, but wish I could have reused this one. And for the shifter bushings, I just talked to Ben from Rogue Engineering, and he has upgraded bushings for this shifter arm, which is fantastic. For now, let's extract the old bushing. Okay, here we are, fresh batch of parts. Got the brand new lever from the dealer, painted this, painted that. That's brand new, and I confirmed that the old one was bent. The new one isn't. And another fun fact, the old one uses the old style round bushings. The new arm uses oval bushings. Thankfully, Ben from Rogue Engineering came in and saved the day. He sent me 2 different types of Delrin bushings for this arm, and we have the oval ones here that fit nicely. They don't fit that well on the other side because they didn't bore out this hole properly or whatever from the factory, so you have to kind of expand the hole to get it to fit, but once you do that, everything is bueno. So now we are going to install this bushing in this bracket here and then reassemble everything. I removed the leftovers from the old bushing, which was molded into the bracket, so this is nice and clean and painted. This is the bushing for the E30 shifter carrier. It is precisely what we need, exact fitment, and this is from Strongflex, and this is readily available anywhere. So we're gonna use a bit of silicone spray here and then push the bracket onto the bushing, and it's going to clip on the back, and that way it's going to stay and not pop out. So there it is. That's it. Bushing installed, and this is now a serviceable item. So I'm gonna use a bit of silicone grease here. Perfect. And pop it into place. 1 and 2. So here we're going to use white lube, the bushings, first the rod with some high temp grease and a yellow washer on the back, and then a brand new clip. Okay, just make sure that it doesn't have side to side play. We need to lower the transmission slightly, otherwise I can't clip in the clips. I believe that should be enough. All right, I also put the boot on the lever. Clip it in, it's one in. All right, both of them clipped in. Side to side play is what you want to eliminate, and that's good. That is very good. So let's put the transmission back into position. Okay, get this cable through. I'm gonna use that to seat the rubber boot. Zinc plated screws. Washer here, and pop it in. And a clip. All right. Now that is a tight connection. Don't want slop in the shifter. Okay, now we should be able to pull this cable, and the boot is going to clip into place. Okay, I need both hands. I got it. There you go. So here's how the shifter feels. No slop in the shifter. It feels nice and firm. I like it. 56th and reverse. Fantastic. The shift knob and the leather boot, that's gonna come later.
Back when we built the M70B54 engine, which consists of the M73 block and cylinder heads, and then everything else from the old M70 engine, I learned the hard way that the M70 water pump doesn't fit on the M73 block. Namely, the M73 pump impeller is smaller in diameter than the one of the M70 pump. I crudely grinded the M70 impeller to get it to fit, but that didn't sit right with me or go with the theme of this project. So I set off on a time-consuming and expensive adventure of trying to transfer the M73 impeller on the M70 pump. So I sent 2 new pumps to Topmar Motorworks in Poland to see if it can be done. They experimented, and after a lot of effort, they managed to get it done. And now we have a custom water pump with M70 housing and connections, but with the M73 impeller.
I lubed up the O-rings. Pump spins perfectly. No obstruction of justice.
I spent 3 months and 1,000 euros on this expedition, which is pretty ridiculous, but once done, this car is going to be a driving representation of my work, how satisfying car restoration can be, and how a heavily neglected car can turn into something special one bolt at a time.
And that's done. Gonna gonna start essentially plugging in the engine, all of the lines, coolant lines, and wiring and whatnot. So first we're gonna start with those two hydraulic lines on the steering box. That's the two lines with brand new banjo bolts in.
Then we have more zinc plated software.
Now that's beautiful. Now I want to connect the steering column to the steering box, so I bought this steering wheel level to make sure that the steering wheel is precisely in the center. And this isn't a sex toy, that is a tool that we're going to use to hold the steering wheel in place once we find the right position, and then we can jiggle and struggle underneath of the car. That's the contraption in place. You can see that the steering wheel is perfectly leveled, and then this thing is keeping it in place, and you can't move the steering wheel, which is very important. If only every wheel alignment shop did this. Not a lot that I can film here, but now I need to make sure that the steering box is precisely in the center as well, and then slide the column on. The steering column is finally in. It was a struggle, but you need to line up that gap in the steering column with the mark on the cap and the steering box, and then everything is nice and centered, and now we can secure it with a bolt and a nut. So medium thread locker on the bolt and the nut. You need very, very tiny hands for this. Nice. Now we have a hydraulic line to connect here. Now we're going to hook up the carbon canister to the purge valves. First this pipe here, and it clips in here. We have a line here. This is a 6mm fuel hose. And now we're going to slide over another hose as an extra layer of protection. That's how it was from the factory. It goes right there, like that. And then the hose goes there. Then we can cut it right about there. Yep. And then we have this Y connection piece here. The original one is NLA, but you can pick this up on eBay. It's readily available everywhere, pretty much. And then we need two lines to connect to this purge valve and that purge valve. And another little task is done.
More stuff to connect, like the starter cable. Then the engine wiring harness.
The AC lines. So, lubed up O-rings. Bolts. The AC system is brand new, and the last thing that we need to do to convert it from the old R12 to R134A system are the valves here. The thin line, that's the high pressure side, and the thick line here, that's the low pressure side. And these you can find readily online. They're not that expensive, and they get the job done. There's a valve and an O-ring on the inside. So just snug it up. You don't want to go too crazy because the O-ring on the inside seals. And then before we recharge the system, we'll pull the vacuum and see if it holds the said vacuum. Oil filter housing, we need to clean it thoroughly. That is very dirty indeed. Okay, unfortunately we can't vapor blast this because it's far too sensitive for that. If some media gets stuck inside of this thing, it'll grenade the engine. So I'm gonna take this apart as much as I can, and then we're gonna pop it in the ZZ machine. That's the initial cleanup done, I guess. The cab we can blast though. I think this is screws. Yep. Maybe not. Let's remove the oil pressure switch. I think we can also remove this screw here. Maybe there's a Loctite there or something, I don't know. No, just says sealant there. No gasket either. Let's see if we can get out the big guy. It is. Careful here. Well, that thing jumped out. Yes, we can put this in the ZZ machine now. The ZZ machine. How fresh. Water and cleaner in there. Okay. What's that? Oh, this? Oh, that's my Vixen Surface Treatments Aquablast 1215 vapor blasting cabinet. And we're about to make that part look better than brand new. You know the drill. Yeah, you do. Why, yes. There it is. Nice. Looks good. Nice and clean. I'm gonna degrease it further and then rinse it out thoroughly, and this is good to go. There we are, all nice and clean. The oil filter housing is looking beautiful actually. And I used a ton of degreaser, brake cleaner, nitro thingy over there, water, then brake cleaner, compressed air, and then I used a heat gun to make sure it's completely dry and free of any moisture, because this is one place where you don't want water. So this is nice and clean, vapor blasted. Got some new parts here, and let's reassemble it. Oh yeah, I managed to pull this thing out. It actually has a clip on the bottom, a circlip. So you just pull on it and it'll pop out. So let's first pop this into place. Next, we have the tiny plug, and I managed to find a crush washer for it. So we're gonna use that instead of thread locker. This we're gonna have to smear with, there it is. So it's not a locker, it's a sealer. Okay, that's a full stop and a brand new oil pressure switch. Nice and tight. Zinc plated bolt here. Got the plate here as well, so let's go ahead and install this. Lube up the O-rings. Gingerly pop it into place. Okay. Very good. Connect the oil pressure switch. And connect it here. We have a line here that we need to connect with a brand new Benjamin. Good and twist. Nice. And then this little bracket here. Schön, oder? Brand new ignition coils, OE Bosch, and fresh software. And lastly, the cover. There it is. Gonna leave the coil unplugged for now, because we want to crank the engine over for the first time without firing it to build oil pressure. Nice. Gonna hook up the throttle bodies. clipped in.
These are the DMEs, aka engine computer modules. There are 2 in total, 1 per bank, and then there's 1 EML, electronic throttle control module. As this engine is now far from stock, we can't run a stock map, hence why there are chips in front of you. On modern cars, tuning the engine and changing the map is as easy as plugging in a laptop with a cable to the car. Well, on this old thing, it ain't that simple. DMEs and EML have chips. You need to open the DME, remove the chip, and then connect it to a special and rather old machine and burn a new map on the chip. My friend Arian from the US has nearly the same engine setup as I do, and he burned me new chips with a new map that's suitable for this engine. He offers tuning and modification services for BMWs, and his contact info is in the description. And here is the chip. The white plastic cover needs to come off. And then it's a straight shot at the chip, which needs to be lifted out. In goes the new one.
So push it in all the way. And then put the cover back on. The EML sheesh! Well, what do we do now, hombre? I see. Pull this one out here. There it is. Now we can squeeze the tabs there. Also need to release them here. Ah, there it is. Nice. I think now in front we need to pop it out. There are tabs here. Gonna grab a heat gun, soften up the plastic. So there are 2 tabs on the sides, and then you have to pry here in the middle to kind of release this upper board. And now I think we can take it out. Okay, there we are. There we are. Hello. So that's the chip there. And this is the CSI chip S70, because we are going to be retrofitting the sport button. We absolutely need that with the mods that we've done. And put it back together. Clip, clip, and the one through the bottom. Installation time. Let's pop in the EML first. The time has come to crank the engine and build oil pressure. Now, we didn't replace the piston rings or hone the block, so we don't need to break in the engine in that department. However, we did install regrinded camshafts, and we need to break them in. So for the first round of oil, we're going to go with mineral oil from Liquid Moly, so we can allow a bit of wear to happen with the cams and they properly bed in. And we're gonna drive with that oil for about 1,000 kilometers, and then we're gonna switch to full synthetic. So let's top it up. Drink up. Yes. Brand new filter. And dump it in. We lubed up the O-ring. Good. The hydraulic fluid, many cars from the 80s, including this one, used green hydraulic fluid, CHF 7.1. That oil has been long surpassed, and the only company that still makes that oil that meets that spec is Febi. Now, I don't know how long they're gonna keep making that stuff, so we're simply going to start with CHF 11S, which you can do. You can upgrade from 7.1 to 11S, but you can't mix two of them. I mean, you can, but it is not recommended. However, in our case, the system is brand new, completely empty, so we're just gonna start using this stuff, which is the equivalent oil from Liqui Moly. This is what I run in the E60 M5 and whatever other modern BMWs we have around here. I think I forgot to mention it, but CHF 7.1 is mineral-based oil, and 11S is fully synthetic. Okay, it's quite good for now. Now we're going to crank the engine for the very first time. The cooling system is obviously not hooked up, but it doesn't matter because we don't want this engine to start. The hydraulic system is hooked up, as well as the oil system. I unplugged all of the fuel injectors so they can't spritz fuel into the combustion chamber, and the ignition coils are disconnected, so there will be no spark and there is no chance of this engine starting. The fuel pump is plugged in, which is good. I wanted to build pressure so we can verify that there are no leaks. So now we're just gonna keep cranking the engine and verify that there are no leaks, and we can build oil pressure before we start it for the first time. Okay, I hooked up the batteries. Let's turn the key and see what happens. It's yelling at me in French. Du fou. Lampes de fou, fouc, le terreur. It's a good thing I'm fluent in French. All right, here we go. That's that starter noise. Oh, it sounds good. Oh, I can't wait to start this engine for the first time. How are we looking? Good looking? All right. I don't smell any fuel. Gonna check the oil level. Okay, we don't want to overheat the starter, but I'm really happy with that. Sounds nice and even, smooth, and nothing is leaking. That V12 starter sound is just glorious. That red oil light, that's oil pressure monitored by that oil pressure switch on the oil filter housing. And once you start cranking the engine, it should go off. And that means that we have sufficient oil pressure inside of the engine and oil circulating everywhere. And it sounds very good. The cooling system, currently there are no good OE or OEM alternatives when it comes to the radiator for the E31. Mahle, which I bought a long time ago, it's made in China and it has this crappy core that you can see here. This isn't going to last. I also ordered Nissan, which has the exact same core as this one, which is the good core, but these connection pieces here don't look that good, and it was bent. When they strapped it in the box, they bent the bottom part, so I shipped it back. Ended up buying a brand new one from the dealer. This is made by Bear in South Africa from 2013. So this is the old stock, good old stock. It's very expensive, 450 euro. But again, this car is being restored to absolute perfection to last. So only the best parts are going on this car. And then of course we have brand new coolant hoses, clips, and the expansion tank is also original from BMW. Otherwise, if you buy Mahle, it's made in China and it's gonna crack in about 5 minutes. The seat for the radiator goes here. This clips into place. Another one on the other side. In you go. Well, would you look at that? It fits like 3 million bucks. The fan shroud with a brand new overflow hose. The expansion tank. We have a rubber grommet here, this bracket here, and then yet another bracket. Look at that amazing design, huh? Screw. Beautiful. Then we have a clip here. We have the AC sensor here. And that's the radiator and fan shroud in place and sturdier than Sturdy Johnson. Okay, fan clutch. Here we're going with OE Plus upgrade. This is E65 fan and fan clutch, Bayer made in Germany. And this is upgrade over E31 stock fan setup because this moves more air. Fan clutcherson going in. Let's get it started, you know. Just do this and nothing else. Can't come off because it spins in the opposite direction. And that's the cooling system done. The coolant we'll add at a later stage. Really good progress so far. In the next episode, we gotta do the diff, the drive shaft, button up the complete exhaust, and then we can finally start this thing for the very first time. And then of course, if everything goes well, we gotta do the suspension, the brakes, and then we can even drive it. But right now we're gonna hit a little pause with Project Marseille because finally, after 336 years, we're gonna start working on Project Hovde, the E39 M5. So that's going to be the next episode. Actually, no, it's gonna be on Project Rottweil and then Project Hovde. And then E31 will likely come in January, maybe, you know. I want to get this thing ready for summer. I want to drive it. And I got to find a paint shop as well to paint it. I am actively looking for a paint shop that wants to work with me, but I want to work directly with the owner, you know, the boss man who owns the workshop, so he can figure out everything, how to paint the car and whatnot, because this car, it needs to be taken down to bare metal and then repainted, and it needs to look really, really good, like on par with the mechanical stuff that I've done on this car. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, maybe consider hitting a like button and maybe even subscribing. That would be fabulous, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!